All right, let's get started. So good evening, good morning, everyone. For those of you who are joining, who have attended our sessions in the past, welcome back. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, Spark is a mentoring initiative that aims to help undergraduate and graduate students, as well as working professionals in the education and mentoring space. We provide resources on career guidance for the studies and several other peripheral skills. So you can check out more on our website. It's www.sparkmentoring.info. We are currently offering 6 programs that you can learn more about by visiting our website. And today's session is under our Achieve program that focuses on professional and peripheral skills development. We've previously conducted sessions on how to make a presentation, improving your communication skills, writing your resume, and how to prepare for job interviews. And today's session is on getting your MBA. We have with us Dhvanil, Chhaya, Nattu, and Medha. Dhvanil graduated from ICT in 2013. He worked in investment banking for a few years and then got his MBA from London Business School in 2019. He currently works at DAM Capital as the VP of Investment Banking. Next, we have Chhaya, who got her BTech in 2012. She worked at BASF after and then got her MBA from Jamnalal Bajaj in 2017. And she currently works at Accenture as a management consultant. Next, we have Nattu, who also got his BTech in 2012 at ICT, worked at Biocon for a few years, and then got his MBA from Emory University in USA. He currently works as the director at LexisNexis Risk Solutions. And lastly, we have Medha, who graduated from ICT in 2017. She got her MBA from IIM Ahmedabad in 2020, and she currently works as a product marketing manager at Upgrad. So we were very cognizant of having a diversity in terms of backgrounds and experiences of these speakers, and we hope that most of you in the audience benefit from that. And as for today's workshop, Dhvanil and Nattu will focus more on the elements of getting an MBA abroad, whereas Chhaya and Medha will talk more about getting an MBA in India. And they will collectively try and touch on most components of the MBA process, like your entrance exams, developing your profile, selecting schools, and maximizing your time when in the MBA program. So after their talk, we will transition to a Q&A section, which will be moderated through Pigeonhole. So you can use this QR code on the screen or go to www.pigeonhole.at. Use the code 05JUN21 and post questions as they come to your mind during the session or after. You can even like questions posted by other people, and there's a higher likelihood of the most liked questions answered first. One last thing, you will also later receive a link to the feedback form in the chat window. We really encourage you to provide feedback, share your thoughts, and let us know what you liked about the session and what we can do to improve. So with that, I'll let Nattu take it over.
All right, I'm just going to start sharing my screen in a second. And actually, I'm going to have Medha kick us off because we're going to be talking about just some general stuff that we got some poll questions on, and then kick us off with the MBA in the Indian university space. So Medha, all you.
Thanks, Nattu. Thanks, Amar and Anusha, for this great event that you all are hosting. So great. Thanks all for your time today. And we'll ensure the next 40 to 45 minutes is really gripping and a lot more information filled for all of you. So keep your notes ready, all right? Results from the poll questions that we took a short while ago stated that almost all of you were really wanting to pursue an MBA or were considering to pursue an MBA. So that's a plus and a hit for our session today. 80% of you were undergrad students, and about 60% said you wanted to pursue your MBA from India, and 20% said abroad, and the remaining was still unclear. So we are here to help you out decide on the third question as well. So I and Chhaya will kick off with MBA from Indian universities. Jumping on to about me, my journey so far. I joined ICT in 2013. That was the first major decision where I chose a niche field of selecting food technology over a more stable electrical engineering option, which I was getting from VJTI and SPIT. But after having interacted with professors, people at the college at ICT, and I really understood that there's a lot of value in me pursuing food tech, and I thought it could really help me achieve newer goals and unravel new opportunities that I thought would be really great for me to build my career in. Fast forward to July 2016. All during that time, during the 2.5, 3 years that I spent at ICT, I did try to engage myself a lot in all the PORs, which is positions of responsibilities that one can imagine being in an undergrad college. I pursued my research internship at Mondelez in 2016, and during the final presentation, I was supposed to present it to the management team along with the research team, and the ideas that I got from the management team were so brilliant and engaged me so much more that, hey, I think there's something else on the other side of the table, and I like to be there instead of the one being in the lab and executing and running experiments. And that's when I think that was a turning point for me to decide that I think I want to pursue my MBA. I gave my first attempt in 2016 that year. After just deciding, coming fresh out of that internship, failed at it, sat for my placements, and was the only BTech hired by Agilent Technologies back then, and then decided to give like a more serious attempt at CAT. I had 3 months to prepare during the training period that I had, and I gave it my all during the preparation that time. Jan 2018, the results came out that I had belled the cat, as it goes, the terminology. Feb to March were the interviews that were held, and April, the results of the individual colleges were starting to get announced, and I had cleared My Mba. So fast forward to July 2020, which is graduating in the glorious era of COVID. My job was supposed to start in April, right after I graduated, immediately. Like I had a gap of 10 days, but suddenly the nation went into lockdown, and my job, my firm kept extending it until mid-July, after which they said, sorry, things don't look really clear for us, and you're out on your own. So and I started looking out for jobs for myself, and I landed up at Upgrad as a product marketing manager, and I'm now a business manager growth. So that's the story for me.
Whoa.
Chhaya, over to you for your story.
Hang on, I have no idea what happened. Just give me a second.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Chhaya.
Chhaya, we
Okay.
can't hear you. Nope. Nope.
So can't hear you. No.
It's funny how it was working literally like 15 minutes ago.
Mm, should we move on to the part and then come back to Chhaya?
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. So just give us some time, and then Chhaya will help you tell her story in detail. So coming on to how, now that you know about the journey, how do you actually prepare yourself for an MBA, right? Here are the 5 steps that we've put down to you for you to actually work on. First, you begin with building your resume. Second is about gaining work experience to be able to add better value to your peers in your B school. Third is shortlisting colleges. Fourth is about CAT preparation. And fifth is about interview preparation after you clear CAT. So we'll be going through each of the steps in more detail. Talking about prepping up for your MBA, step 1, which is CV building. Now, a lot of it starts with who you are as an individual and how can you add value to your peers at B school, right? So for that, you need to have, one, a solid personality, and two, things that you have done so that it comes out as, oh, hey, you are unique and you will add value to the people in this batch. So start with internships, as many as you can. Start with doing skill building internships. If you think you're confused between core and non-core fields, right? So try doing internships in core fields and non-core fields. There's a lot of internships being offered these days, and all of you know the common platforms to look at could be Internshala, etc. And you can also approach your professors for these internships. Second is projects. Try and do research projects with professors. Now, if you are currently in your first or second or third year and you're still unclear about, hey, I'm not really sure, I'd still like to keep my options open. So having research oriented projects with professors help you get letters of recommendations from them later if you decide to go forward doing your GRE, right, your master's in science. So that would definitely play out well. Even if not, it still helps you build a very, very special intellectual bond with your professor. So try doing that. The third is community service. Try putting in, say, 100 hours of over a year into causes that you truly believe in. Could be any cause that you believe in. I was engaged with ICT Marathon for all 4 years during ICT, and every year we used to partner with a different NGO, and so always I ensured that I actually participated in whatever it was, make a difference, make a wish. So all the Cry, we partnered with all of these amazing NGOs, and I ensured that I gave my time to it because I really resonated with the causes. The fourth is try and excel in one hobby. As much as we've heard all professors, our parents tell us, hey, no, just do curriculars, right? Just focus on getting good GPA. Having a hobby really, really helps bring out the other side of your personality, right? I have studied with my batchmate in Ahmedabad who had a Guinness World Record or a Limca Book World Record for playing the maximum number of musical instruments at once. So I mean, amazing thing to have, right? You can talk about it. It's just a conversation starter as well. And it helps you position yourself as a unique individual during your interviews. So that was for CV building. Chhaya, are you able to pick the point on WorkX? Not yet.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, finally. Cool. Okay, a little bit about me, right? Like before I go into the WorkX piece of it. So it's been like a lot of us might have the entering into ICT is just a milestone. It's like study hard for your 10th, 12th, get cracking, get good scores, and you enter and you're like, hush, now I'm done for one thing. But then as the years pass by, it's only more confusion about what next. And I'd just say that the 4 years were actually the golden period of this college. As Medha rightly mentioned, you need to pick up a lot of positions of responsibility, not just from the perspective of building your resume, but also understanding what you love to do and what you don't like to do. Are you good with people? Are you good on the technical side? Is writing research paper your thing, or hosting an event your thing? So it just helps you explore your other side of the personality. So the 4 years literally in ICT were the years where I was exploring myself, unknowingly or knowingly was building my resume. But 2011 onwards is when all the pressure started to kick in. Is it GATE? Is it GRE? Is it placements? So I've been going with the flow as and when. Like, it's not that during my BTech itself I was clear that I want to do an MBA, but I took what came my way. And I got placed in BASF, and luckily in the company I was into a management role. So rest everybody who joined the team with me were management graduates from different colleges, and I was the only engineering graduate, but then got into a management kind of a role, which was sales, business development, reach out to customers, speak to them. So it just gave me a perspective around, like, okay, these kind of roles are what generally management people get into. So do I like doing that? Do I not like doing that? So only when I explored this side of the business is when I became more and more sure, okay, yes, maybe this is the area that I want to grow into. So that's how the realization of doing my MBA, or the idea of doing my MBA, came in. I have around 3 years of work experience, but it's only towards 2014. That's after completing 2 years with BASF, I realized that maybe I can start prepping. I gave my exams. Again, as you see in Indian universities, you'll have a lot of different exams. So I've given a lot of different exams from that perspective also, CAT, CET, TIS, XAT. So all of this to then moving into what my college options are, where can I get, and the interview process, and towards the college. So in this years, right, it's long duration of I would say 7 years. So maybe the initial 4 years for me were really focused on building my resume, put extracurricular, co-curriculars, internships, everything what you could squeeze in, right? And the BASF period was for me a period where I try to understand what are my long-term career aspirations, which side of the table I really want to be. Like Medha mentioned, right? Do you want to be in labs doing some great research, or do you want to be on the other side driving business decisions, being closer to the clients, consumers, etc.? So it helped me identify that, and at the same time it strengthened my resume a lot, because what is your in MBA, generally what matters is the immediate previous thing that you have done. Like, if you are a fresher, then your college positions of responsibilities, extracurricular, co-curricular, matter a lot. But if you have work X, then the previous work X matters a lot. So it just helped me strengthen my resume going into MBA. So that's my journey up to MBA. And since I've spoken about work X, I'll just touch a little bit more on those aspects. So WorkX is not mandatory. So let me make this very clear. There are freshers who go to MBA, then there are people with WorkX who go to MBA. So it's not mandatory from an application perspective, but my personal experience is that it helps people in a lot of ways. That's what we have just listed down here. So one thing is you get to experience the corporate environment, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You work in the corporate, you do understand that how does a corporate function, what are the different kind of roles that exist out there. So it helps you in that. The second important thing is it helps you figure out what are the different kind of roles, like we spoke about being different side of the table, right? What is it? Finance, there are operations, there's sales. So you'll just understand how the organization works, what are the different roles, what do people perform on a day-to-day basis, and then you'll probably be able to align your interests accordingly. And third point, of course, stated that WorkX does strengthen your resume. And the fourth thing which has helped me the most is at least some portion of your savings goes into preparing yourself financially for the next big thing you're taking. It will be a portion of it, not completely covered by your work experience, but it will just get you mentally and financially prepared to take the next leap. So Generally, again, WorkX is not a mandatory thing, but if you go with it, it will help you. It'll add a lot of value to your resume and to the decisions you take once you enter into an MBA college. So that's about WorkX, yes. And just moving towards what is of immediate importance to you guys, right? So when you look at MBA, you have a plenty of options in your colleges, plenty of courses that are available. So let's go one by one, right? First, coming to a list of colleges. So there are, of course, it's classified as tier 1 and tier 2 here. So tier 1 colleges are like IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore. So all the IIMs, the old IIMs, ISB, XLRI, FMS, JB. So all of these colleges are the tier 1, and purely the classification is based on the kind of professors you get, the kind of courses that are offered, and kind of the placement records they have. So the classification purely is based on these criteria. So the tier 1 colleges and the tier 2 colleges, which also offer similar courses, are the new IIMs which are coming. Even in IIT, they have Department of Management Studies, where you can get your MBA done, right? Then there is NMIMS, SIBM. So the list goes on and on. There are a long list of colleges that's there. We have flashed on the screen some of it which is there. So these are just classified by the strength of the placement records and the courses that are offered. That are tier 1 and tier 2. Moving ahead, we have a classic 2-year MBA that most people do, PGP courses. Then there are also 1-year executive MBAs like those ones offered in ISB. And then there are part-time MBAs. So it's like typically a 2 to 3 year course which you do along with your jobs in the evenings. So all of these course options are available across different kind of colleges, and it entirely depends upon your interest on what do you want to pick up. Are you the one who want to go through the regular 2 years of MBA college, have that network built, etc.? So that 2-year MBA college is for you. 1-year executive MBAs generally are the ones who have good work experience, 5 years, 6 years, and then they want to get it done in 1 year and move on with their career journey. Yeah, the 1-year MBAs are for them. Moving to part-time MBAs, people who have some financial challenges, or they love what they're doing right now. They do not want to quit what they're doing, but at the same time, explore the other options. So part-time MBAs are for them, which will be your evening courses. So these are from the perspective of what are the different type of courses you will see when you speak about MBA. Moving to specialization, right? Generally, people know just about finance, marketing, operations, etc. But we have a lot of options. Specialized option in MBAs as well, like MICA will give you a marketing MBA in just marketing communication. So how do brands communicate? So all of those things come in marketing communication. There's healthcare administration. NMIMS has a course only on healthcare management, right? Food agribusiness, like Medha mentioned, I am Ahmedabad, I am Lucknow. These have on food and agribusiness who have background and want to continue in a similar field, right? Design and textiles, the institutes like NIFT, they'll have courses for you in fashion design, the merchandise management part of it. There's also some right now, the latest one coming, which are catching up the technology around analytics, data sciences, etc. So these are evolving. This is not an exhaustive list, but just an indicative list for you guys to look at, like what are the kinds of specializations also you can get into. And depending on the college and the specialization, the nature of the college, the nature of the exam and the specialization, you'll have a series of exams that you'll have to cater to. You want to get into a 2-year PGP course, CAT, GMAT, ZAT. These are like the proper 2-year courses that are there. You want to get into private institutes like SIBM, then you have SNAP. If you want to get into institutes like TIS, so there's a combination of institutes and exams. Depending on what kind of institutes you want to get into, you'll have to prepare. Having said that, 80% structure of all these exams are the same. There will be 20% variance which you will need to prepare for as and when whatever you're appearing. And cracking exam is one bit of it, but after cracking exams also, you have to go through a couple of rounds before you finally make it to the college. So your exams, after that you have your written aptitude test or your GDs and your personal interviews, where you actually narrate story, which Medha will speak later. And that's when the entire process of getting into college gets done. And after the college is another journey, which we'll speak about towards the end. So over to you, Medha.
Thanks. For beautifully explaining it, Chhaya. Coming to step 4, which is the CAT prep. Now, definitely go full gung-ho with your preparations. You've already decided which colleges you want to, apply for. You have your dream list of colleges. You know which exams you have to give. Join reputed classes, which you all must be aware of. There's time and so many more in India that we have, or you can just join their test series, pick up the test series that these classes offer. And in addition to that, you can follow channels like Pagal Guy or Inside IIM to be regularly updated on any new regulations that are coming in, to be a part of the discussion forums, understand, hey, the peers will be appearing for this exam with you, what are the type of questions they're asking, do some problem solving with them. That'll be good enough for you to have your preparation. This can be around June of that year that you'll be appearing for your exam. And June to September, definitely focus a lot more on understanding the concepts, strengthening your concepts. Now, September to November is when you go ahead with giving mocks, as many mock exams as you can. Do critical analysis of your mocks to understand what are your strengths and your weaknesses, so that you can work on either of them. And just closer to the exam day, you're just okay to relax a bit, and the typical exam prep, as we've been through the grind through JEE, etc. And go ahead and bell the cat. Now coming to the part where you have belled the cat and you are now invited to your interviews and the subsequent rounds, right? The GD preparation or interviews with the most amazing institutes that you wanted to be a part of. Now here's the time, the step 1, which is building your resume, will actually reap benefits to help you answer the classic questions like why MBA, why this particular program, why this institute. So all that you've done previously in the first 2 steps will now sort of help you answer these questions, because at the end of the day, what are MBAs, right? Decision makers. They take decisions based on logical reasoning, and you will be asked these questions. They're trying to see how logically you take decisions about your own life, right? And you will be able to answer all of them if you've done the step 1 amazingly well. Be on the top of the game of what current affairs are ongoing, because they also quiz you on that. They don't just want somebody who's like, yeah, I am here a 99.9 percentiler, okay, and hey, what's going on in the economy today? And you'll be like, sorry, I don't read newspapers. So yeah, you can't be like that in your interviews as well. So always think of what the institute is looking at you from. They're trying to see what value will you add to the batch, and which is why I should select you, because later you will be an alumni of this prestigious institute, and you will just bring laurels to the alma mater. So after all this, the interviewer will tell you that he'll give you an offer that you can't refuse. So yeah, you'll go ahead and be a part of that dream school that you always wanted to be. Over to you, Natu and Dhvanil.
All right. Thank you so much, Chhaya and Medha. That was pretty amazing. Very, very different processes, right? For how things are conducted in India, as you all will see in the next few pieces. But there's a lot of overlap as well, right? In terms of common things that they look for. So hopefully, by us talking about how the process happens on the international MBA side of things, y'all will get some more clarity on that aspect as well, and hopefully it'll help you make a better decision on where you want to pursue an MBA and whether you want to do so as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to DD to talk about his journey up to the MBA so far, and we can kick things off from there.
Thank you, Natu. Thank you, Medha and Chhaya. That was really insightful, into how a journey into an Indian institute would be. I'd say a global MBA is slightly different, and probably just walk you through my journey to give you a slightly different perspective on how I got there. So I joined ICT in 2009 in BTech Polymers. Somebody who loved math and chemistry, probably engineering was the only calling for somebody here in India. I'd say the first 2 years were a breeze. You make new friends, you have you're doing lab work in a completely different environment. For me, sort of the turning points in directing where I wanted to go were 2011-12. Sort of in the third year, I was the co-head of Manzar, which is a cultural festival at ICT, where I realized how much I enjoy sort of organizing events, people skills, and that, and then coupled with towards the end of the third year, where we have a compulsory internship, where I interned at Reliance in a completely core R&D kind of a role. And I just knew this wasn't my calling. I was more interested in the aspects of business, finance, and sort of in the fourth year, we had a class at ICT on project economics, which was sort of the stepping stone towards finance and business valuations, etc. And I just enjoyed it so much, and it was taught by Professor Pandit, and it was just excellent. And it sort of steered me towards the path of hey, let me see what this entirely is. So immediately post graduation, I took up a job in investment banking. At the same time, being from an engineering background, your accounts and other sort of aspects are slightly weak. So I started pursuing my CFA, which is which has 3 levels, which sort of went on till 2015. So while I was working in investment banking, I also sort of pursued my CFA to hone those finance skills. And I started realizing how much I actually enjoy this. At the same time, going abroad for higher education was something which was always on my mind. I had given my GRE way back in college, but I decided not to do a master's then because I just felt it was not my calling. Somewhere around 2014-15, I knew that I really wanted to do an MBA abroad. MBA still remains, one of the premier sort of business degrees in the world, and I knew it would add a lot of value. Somebody who had worked and studied only in India, I just didn't want to restrict myself, domestically. I wanted to have that international exposure and experience. So I started, preparing for my MBA, which was giving the GMAT, looking up universities, talking to people. Early 2016, I sort of shortlisted most of the schools I wanted to go to. For me, it was pretty clear. I knew I wanted to be in core finance, and I wanted to be in a financial hub. So London and New York were the 2 cities, which were top of my priority. And I had shortlisted 3 schools, which was Columbia Business School, NYU Stern, and London Business School. Sort of October to December 2016 was the time of all applications, interviews, and finally started my MBA in 2017. Probably will shed some more light on the entire process and what these schools are looking for, in a couple of minutes. So that was my journey till MBA, and I think Nattu can probably now, tell us his, and you'll just get to see that there's no one particular journey to an MBA.
Yeah, I think that's the key message, Didi, right? I mean, if you even see Chhaya and Medha's journey up to the MBA, I guess that probably shows you all that there is no one path, there isn't one profile, right? Like some of you had probably asked that question early on. How do I prep myself to align myself to sort of probably land the best school or whatever, right? Like there's certain things, but fitting into a profile is not one of them, right? They value everything that you do, and it's all about the story that you build, and reaping value from all of the experiences you've had, right? So here's a little bit about my journey up to the MBA program. I was actually Chhaya and Amar's classmate at ICT. So joined in 2008 and graduated in 2012 from the BTech Pharma class. As Chhaya mentioned, right, I mean, the first 3 years are typically, your golden years, and you have obviously a lot less to worry about, but then there's this thing that is at the back of your mind constantly asking you what next, right? So I was for the longest time torn between, MS, PhD, or an MBA. I've come in from a family wherein people have mostly only pursued an MS or a PhD. I didn't really have any sort of business folks in my family trying to advise me or guide me along that front. So it didn't seem like an option also in the beginning, right? But it was only in my third year when I was actually interning at Novartis Sandoz that my manager, who happened to be a really, really great mentor, sort of showed me what that angle even looks like, right? So he was the head of the generic API division at Sandoz, and he was like personally invested in helping me trying to figure out what next. So honestly, right after then, like that's kind of when I decided that I wanted to do an MBA. I hadn't figured out any concentration, any specialization at that point, whether India or abroad. Also at that point, it was just, hey, I think I want to do an MBA. So let me just get done with my GRE, just because I'd already started, prepping for it like everyone does. And, knew that this was my path forward. Right. So one other thing that I also realized, again, in speaking with him, as Chhaya had mentioned early on, right, there's a lot of value to working before your MBA. And I knew I wanted to do that as well, right? So my manager at Sandoz was very persuasive from that angle. And he was like, do not think about doing an MBA if you don't work beforehand. So I sort of took his word for it in a way, and decided to sit for placements. And I landed my first job out of ICT at Biocon. So I joined as a senior process engineer um, in the tech transfer team for the most part. I realized that I didn't really want to be on the technical side of things about a year in. um, it goes back to the same thing that Medha and Chhaya was saying earlier, right? Like, you want to figure out which side of the table you want to sit on. While I loved what I was doing, I didn't see myself pursuing this longer term. And I wanted to be on the business side of things, right? So that was one of my sort of moments of truth, if you will. The second piece was around trying to decide whether I wanted to do an MBA in India or abroad, right? So that's when I started sort of doing some research in terms of, okay, what are the differences between the programs that are there in India and the programs that are available abroad, and what do they look for, what do they provide, what sort of experiences you have, right? So just sort of doing some preliminary research, I figured that I wanted to pursue a global MBA. My background in a way actually helped make my decision a little bit, because I actually had lived abroad all my life prior to coming to ICT. And just growing up in the Middle East and sort of being involved in a part of multiple cultures, it showed me that value of that global perspective, and I cannot stress how important it was for me. So I knew I wanted to sort of pursue a global MBA at that very point. So then the next step was, okay, like, how can I potentially start pivoting into this business side of things? And that's when I started exploring business roles, right? So I then moved back home to Dubai to work at MaxCare, which is a healthcare third-party administrator company, and I worked as a market research analyst to hone some of my business skills, right? Which is primarily around, in this case, doing some market research for comparative analysis, and trying to figure out where the industry is headed, and helping our C-suite with a bunch of special projects around customer operations and things like that. So this was a time when I started truly figuring out the value of the business side of things, and it strengthened that will to want to do an MBA even more. And in the first half of 2015 is kind of when I started my prep for GMAT, right? So unlike the Indian MBA programs, like, there's only one exam that you have to give for MBAs abroad, and that's the GMAT. So I sort of took my time with it because I was working as well. And, I didn't want to sort of hurry myself into anything just yet. So I took a good 6 months preparing for my GMAT, did a lot of mocks, referred to a lot of, guides that they have, the official guides and a bunch of other supplemental materials. There's a lot of other, um, you know, resources that are available out there in terms of helping you prep for the GMAT as well, right? So GMAT Club is one of those really, really famous sites for helping you with additional prep. For some of my universities, I found out that TOEFL was also a mandatory requirement. So I knocked that out in a few days, and pretty much then decided to go through the next step, which was similar to what again Medha and Chhaya mentioned, which is shortlisting your schools after giving your exams, right? So during my research phase, which we'll get to in a little bit in terms of how to think about schools, I spent a good couple of months because again, the world is your oyster, and pretty much in a way that there's so many options available out there, and it's a very different thought process in a way in terms of figuring out what school you want to go into, right? So I spent some time doing that, then went through this sort of strenuous process of applying to B schools, right? So again, we'll get into details in terms of what that looks like, but essentially what at a high level, what that meant was writing your essays, getting your recommendation letters from your managers in the past, and then going through the round one of interviews. So unlike DD, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do just yet, which is totally fine. And I basically went with the general management approach, which is typically what a lot of other international MBA programs have to offer. And I basically applied to 5 schools in round one to figure out if my essays even made sense or if it was me just shooting in the dark, hoping to sort of land a good offer, right? So did my first round of interviews, got some results. I got a few admits. I was waitlisted in some universities, got rejects from, I think it was Harvard at that point, right? So I knew instantly at that point that that's not going to happen. Then I pivoted my strategy a little bit for round two. So this is an important piece, right? Like don't put all your eggs in one basket in one round. There's multiple rounds to the process. And what I did was essentially did 5, figured out what was wrong with my interviews and my essays in a way, changed that a little bit, and then reapplied in round two to a bunch of different universities, right? So the strategy then at that point was, here are some reach schools, right? So schools that I, would dream of getting into. There are some competitive schools that I would, that I think I can not easily, but in a way, land. And then some like, more backup schools, if you will, right? So those are more of the, I think I'm pretty sure I can land these schools at a minimum, right? It's good to have that mixed bag because you never know what to expect. So I did that in my round 2 applications, had a much higher success rate, and ended up picking Emory University for my 2-year MBA program eventually, for a variety of reasons, right? So as Didi mentioned, location is one of those things that you have to consider in a way. There were a few other factors tied to understanding what sort of jobs I wanted afterwards in a way, and also determining or factoring in the ROI tied to your MBA process, right? So I got a hefty scholarship from Emory, which was still a top 20 school in the US, and that kind of worked out perfectly. So we'll get to how to pick your schools in a bit, but that was a little bit about my journey so far. Once I went into my MBA, like I ended up working at Amazon for my internship. Did my first internship at Amazon in the supply chain strategic planning team. And then landed up an offer in LexisNexis Resolutions in a general management rotational leadership program. And then sort of, I'm currently in my role within the global product strategy team, right? So happy to talk about that in more detail later. But that was a little bit about my journey. So with that, I'm going to just pass it on to Didi to talk about how to prep and apply for your MBA. And you'll sort of see that it's similar, but there are slight nuances to the process.
Sure. Thanks, Natu. So, I would say a good application for an MBA this is globally, purely, it's a very different process, so to speak, in India. So it lies on sort of 6 pillars or 6 boxes. The first one, of course, is your education till date. Undergrad for most people, and some people, they even do a master's and then apply for an MBA. So what kind of university you went to, your specialization, and the grades. Grades are important, but it's not the end of the world. There is always a way to explain that, fine, some of my grades lacked in this semester because I was not really motivated, interested, and how you've changed that. So that is bucket one, which is very important. The second is, of course, the exam, the entrance exam. For most global schools, it's a GMAT. Few nowadays are even accepting the GRE, but 90% of sort of the schools still accept a GMAT. A GMAT is out of 800, it's roughly divided equally between math and English, which includes logical reasoning, etc. Out of 800, anything above 710 is sort of considered a good score. But whichever school you're applying to, see the sort of average GMAT score for the last batch. If it says 710, which was say for London Business School, as an Indian, especially Indian male, like add 20 points more to that. You must, you should have 730. So, a 20-point buffer as an Indian where competition is really high, keep that in mind. The third sort of bucket is Cve and work experience. Unlike an Indian, MBA where work experience is optional for most part, any good MBA school abroad would require at least 3 to 5 years. 3 also being an aberration, most probably 4 to 5 years of good, credible work experience. And what I mean by good work experience is where you've demonstrated some, leadership skill, some team skills. And, in your CV, a lot of people just write, worked on this project. No, like show what kind of impact you made, quantify, and the journey. Basically, if you did some project, then okay, what exactly was your role in it, and how did that help you save the company X hours, or earn the company 3 contracts, whatever it was. The fourth pillar sort of is a recommendation, which is very, very important for a global school, because they usually don't know who you are. They rely on the recommendations to exactly know your strengths and weaknesses. Most schools require roughly 2 recommendations. What happens sometimes is people chase the CEO or somebody really high up in the organization for a recommendation. Nothing wrong, but choose somebody who really knows you well, who you've worked with directly. Designation is not that important. As important it is that they'll actually write something meaningful about who you are. If your manager, anyone in your close circle whom you've worked with for long is an alumni of one of the schools you're applying to, their recommendation really adds a lot of weight. So that's the reco bit. The fifth sort of bucket is extracurriculars. Like, fine, you have great scores, you're a hardworking individual, in a good company. But what are you as a person? What do you do outside of work? What are your interests? The hobbies which Medha touched upon really earlier. It's not just, oh, I play cricket, fine. But if you are passionate about it, what have you done? Community sort of involvement. How have you given back to your alma mater, or given back to the society at large? These are very important aspects. And finally, you've done all of this, but you need to explain it. You need to put it across to the school. And that usually is in a form of an essay. Some schools require 1 essay, some require 2, 3. Topics, can be slightly different, or, framed in a different way, but they all sort of boil down to 3 most important things. Who are you as a person till now, and why do you want to do an MBA? And most importantly, why now? Why are you selecting the particular school you are applying to? What will the school add to you, and what will you sort of give back to the school and the community? What do you basically bring to the class? And finally, how does the MBA as well as the school help you achieve your goals. So it's really important to outline, crystal clear goals, not about, okay, I want to be the CEO in whatever, some bank in 15 years. No, like you need to give a proper pathway that, okay, after I do my MBA, it'll help me plug these loopholes or, these weaknesses, what I don't have. And this is the kind of job I want to take up. And, that's how I'm going to motor along. And, and for essays also, if somebody who's maybe even just applying for a master's, for Indians I've seen, we sometimes feel good English is good essays. No, like I know people who start essays with some random quotes which has nothing to do with their journey or what they've written after that. People just want coherent stories, proper step by step reasons as to why you want to go, who are you, and how this all sort of your experiences now adds up. So I think these are the sort of 6 buckets for an international MBA. I would say all are equally important. Sort of think about it as 10 points for each. And, for good schools, maybe a Harvard, you want to get 57 out of 60. And, but typically say that 53, 54 out of 60 is what you should aim for to, put a really good application and get into a global school. Remember, this is mostly phase 1 of an application. And colleges really don't reveal stats, but phase 2 usually includes interview here is unlike most Indian MBA interviews. Indian MBA interviews would be very grilling. Here it's more informal, it's more sort of knowing your personality, how well would you gel with people from different cultures, and what really are your motivations. And sort of once you clear your interview, that's when you'll get a final offer to join that institute. So, that's about it on preparing and applying for the MBA.
So one quick thing, and thank you, Didi, for sort of shedding light on what this process looks like over here. I just wanted to add one small thing, which was, so your GMAT score is important, but it's not the end all be all, right? So make sure you note that, these things are equally important, right? So I cannot stress how important the value of each of these things are, right? So it's just one small piece of the puzzle. It's not your first sort of stage gate or step in weeding you out, right? So you have essays to actually even explain in a way, if you think your GMAT score is relatively lower, but if you bring a lot of value to the table, you can write an essay talking about that as well. Like, what do you bring to the table? Why should the school pick you over anyone else, right? The other things that I also wanted to talk upon is when we're saying in the work experience piece, demonstrating your leadership skills, a lot of people assume that to be that I need to get promoted 3 times in 4 years, and only then me being a manager of people means that I have leadership skills. That's not true, right? Your ability to influence is extremely important, especially if you don't have power, right? So influencing without authority is a very, very important skill to have. And you have to be able to sort of showcase that as well, right? So even if you don't have any promotions, even if you don't, if you're switching jobs and you're not really growing in your space or whatever, it's fine. It all boils down to the story and how you're actually portraying what you did, and be authentic, right? Like, don't try to fit into certain profiles. Do not try to, showcase what or who you're not. It will come out. Like, these people who are interviewing you have been doing this for years, and you can see authenticity instantly, right? So don't make other people write your essays. Don't make other people write your resume, right? It's so easy to find those things early on and get weeded out from the process. So yeah, look at all of those pieces. And one last thing I do want to stress on is in terms of community involvement. A lot of people ignore this, right? And they only start doing it just before they apply to B school, right? Like, oh, I have to now suddenly be a part of community, and let me just for the last 1 year be overly involved. That's not going to sit well, right? So y'all are in ICT right now. Use this time to start building your social involvement piece, right? Like, you have a lot of years to give back. One, it will do you good, but two, your progress over time in terms of community involvement also matters, not just spending 100 hours 1 year before you apply for your MBA. All right, so with that, we'll just talk about selecting the right program and B school. So there are a lot of programs that are out there, right? So there's a few key steps that we've highlighted in evaluating your school. None of them are more important than the others. So I'm just trying to sort of lay out all of them over here. So the typical pattern that you see most international students apply to is a 2-year MBA program, right? So how do you evaluate this? One thing is that if you're looking to pivot into a new industry or a new function, and you also want to work abroad, that's called a triple jump, right? So if you're trying to do the triple jump, then a 2-year MBA makes sense for you because you have that internship at the end of year 1 to actually test out what you're trying to do and help you sort of land that next job. A 1-year MBA is sort of, in a way, if you have a little bit more experience, you're not looking to do a triple jump, maybe just a double jump, right? Where you're trying to either stay in the same industry or same function, and then maybe, switch geographies, right? Your weekend MBA or exec MBAs are sort of when you have relatively much more experience. And it's going to be incredibly hard as an international student directly to land offers afterwards, right? So in a way, if you're looking to do your MBA and you're directly coming from India, I would recommend looking at the 2-year MBA program heavily, and then consider the 1-year MBA program depending on what your goals are, right? The next thing is rankings. Now, most people tend to place a lot of weight on this. And yes, it's important, but it's only a directional indicator, right? It's not the most important thing. In fact, it will actually be harmful if you only look at rankings, right? So a rule of thumb is that as an international student, you want to try and stick to the top 25 schools, right? Just from an ROI perspective, it makes the most sense because, immigration policies keep changing across time. You may not be able to find a job in that country for whatever reason. And obviously, MBAs abroad are ridiculously expensive. So it might not work out if you do your MBA in the US and then come back to India and have to pay off your loans, right? So think about that, right? And then the other piece is that look at both, rankings across multiple years, because rankings fluctuate every year, right? And they're based on a bunch of factors, and sometimes schools forget to submit certain things, and suddenly a school might just directly drop from maybe rank 9 to like rank 20, right? And that's just a small blip. So don't just look at the previous year's rankings, look at rankings across the past 3 or 5 years, right? Also look at multiple sources for rankings. So internationally, there are 4 key sort of ranking, reputed ranking sites, which is pretty much your US News, your Economist, the Financial Times, and I think Bloomberg as well, right? So those are your sort of 4 big ranking systems that are out there, and that will help you sort of determine where you want to land up, right? The next thing is location, right? So super, super important. Didi touched upon this early on. It's important to find, a university in a place that also allows you to land the job that you want to land after your MBA program, right? In the international MBA program, networking is going to be extremely important, and traveling for interviewing is extremely important, right? So what that means is that if your university is located in the middle of nowhere, which some of the top schools actually are, it's going to get hard for you to attend classes in the morning, take a flight in the afternoon, do your interviews, come back in the evening, maybe attend an evening class, or do your classes again the next day, right? So small example, right? Cornell is a extremely reputed university, fantastic program, but it is literally located in the middle of nowhere, right? So you might be better off sort of having that mobility if you're in a city versus a college town, right? So think about that as well in terms of what your goals are. Also importantly, recognize what sort of offers you want. So as Didi mentioned, if you're looking for finance, you want to identify finance hubs, right? If you're looking for other kinds of hubs, try and understand what that location has to offer. A lot of schools recruit regionally, right? So it's not like, and that might have changed a little bit during the pandemic, but A lot of schools tend to, hire from a southeast region or the northeast region or whatever region that they are in. So you're probably better off being in a cream school in that region as opposed to trying to be in a cream school, but you want to land an offer on the West Coast, for example, right? So think about that as well. Fit. I think this is probably one of the most important things as you're trying to determine your school. So a few things that you can consider are what does the class size look like and how does that feed into your goals, right? So schools have massively different class sizes. Harvard produces 1,000 MBAs each year. Emory produces 150, 180 MBAs each year. So that's a fundamental shift in the class size. What that means is that it's also going to impact your experience that you have in a way, right? Think about culture, whether it's collaborative, competitive, tight knit, etc. You want to consider what sort of jobs are there, right? So this is extremely important because people tend to only look at your recruiting metrics and are like, okay, 97% of the class gets jobs 3 months after graduation. This is awesome, right? You want to drill down. You want to ask current students and alumni in terms of what offers are made to international students, what opportunities do you have specifically, because not a lot of companies sponsor international students. And then two, what roles are they recruiting for within those companies, right? So people might see that Amazon comes and takes like 20 people each year, but what are they recruiting for? They might be only recruiting for one particular role, right, each year, and that may not align with what you want to do. So it's very, very important to understand what that looks like. One other thing is experiential learning opportunities, right? So try and identify how much opportunities you have within your MBA program to work on projects on real world problem projects for companies, right? So you might be able to actually partner with companies for an entire semester to do a project for them, right? Um, Determine how important that is to you. Determine how important having case study classes versus lecture based classes are to you as well, right? So you have schools that specifically focus on these things. Obviously, other factors are your diversity. You want to look at how global your class is, what the male-female ratio is like, if that's important to you, your degree of inclusivity, right? And what the student-teacher ratios might be. So those things also differ across schools. So you want to sort of factor that in, again, depending on how important that is to you. And then finally, clubs. These are extremely important during your MBA program in a way, right? Like there's a lot of professional clubs that help you land the best offers in a way. So strength of the club is almost directly proportional to the strength of the options that you have and the opportunities and their conversion rates for offers. But also the strength of your recreational clubs in a way also determine how much of a fun experience you're going to have during the MBA program, because recognize that these 2 years are also not going to come back. And it's all about building your network, and a huge chunk of that actually comes from interacting with people during club events and so on and so forth, right? Next we have Alumni Network, which is again extremely critical, going back into talking to people and understanding how important that school is for meeting your goals and how your fit might be with that particular school. Realize that your alumni network is going to be one of your biggest assets for life, right? The stronger your alumni network, the you're pretty much set in a way, right? Like and then what I mean by that is, don't just look at quantity, look at how tight knit that alumni network is. So one way to test this in a way early on is to actually reach out to alumni specifically while you're thinking about your MBA programs. Send 10 emails to 10 random alumni on LinkedIn, right? It's okay to cold email people. Depending on how many of them actually respond, it will tell you how involved their alumni are in trying to give back to their school, right? And what that will mean is that they will also be equally involved in trying to recruit for the future as well, right? So it's a direct indicator. Use this as a early way to sort of evaluate whether the school makes sense from an alumni network perspective as well. And then finally, ROI, right? Your top 10 schools, everyone wants to go to a top 10 school, right? Like there's no two questions about it. But think about what that means for you financially as well. A lot of the top 10 schools will likely not offer you any scholarships, and be prepared for that, right? So if you are thinking about ways in which you can finance your MBA, know that a lot of the 10 to 20th rank schools give you hefty scholarships. If you have other, if you have a pretty good score based on how DD said, like there isn't a metric as such, but just, in his language, as he sort of taught about 10 points for each of those 6 things. if you feel like you have a pretty good profile, you'll probably get a pretty good scholarship based on that, right? So think about that. Think about not just your short-term ROI, think about your longer-term ROI as well, which goes back into determining how helpful your alumni network is also going to be, right, moving forward. So these are the 6 things, not in any particular order, but all extremely, extremely important. All right, so we just have a couple of more slides before we wrap up. And this is basically us trying to put together how you can maximize your MBA program, right? Whether you do it internationally or whether you do it in India. So a sneak peek of what to expect and what sort of attitudes you should have coming into the program will really shape the way you think about whether you want to do an MBA and when you want to do an MBA, right? So the first thing is really about being curious, right? So one of Amazon's leadership principles, if you know, would be learn and be curious, right? So honestly, it's extremely important, right? From an academic perspective, a lot of MBA, international MBAs are actually general MBAs. You don't get an MBA in marketing or an MBA in finance or MBA in anything. Those are just typically concentrations, right? And it's not going to show up on your degree. It's just going to show up on your resume if you're applying to a job, and that's it, right? So there's a lot of opportunities for you to actually dip your feet across multiple areas. Use this time during a program to actually expand your boundaries and learn and um, test things that you may not necessarily be comfortable with, right? I landed an offer that I would have never dreamt of coming in, and I didn't even know existed, right? So I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I sort of came in with a very sort of closed mind for wanting to do one particular thing. It's great if you know exactly what you want to do, but for those of you who are on the edge and are open to exploring other things, come in with an open mind. It will really, really help you. Culturally, obviously, there's a lot of, so one big difference is that, at least on the international side of things, is that there's a lot of value that a global class would bring you, right? So leverage perspective from those around you, right? So it's a very important thing to consider. Again, you're going to get perspective from people with different years of work experience. You're also going to get perspective from people who have been exposed to different cultures as well. The next piece is around building your network, right? So I've already touched upon this, but just wanted to highlight this once again. It's going to be our biggest asset. Make sure that you invest time in building relationships with people, because 90% of your MBA is actually about that and not about what courses you take and what you specifically learn in B school, because honestly, you can learn that from anywhere, right? So going back to coming in with an open mind, people can do different things. So essentially just think about what you want to do, have some goal, but explore, right? And finally, focus on becoming a better version of yourself. So MBA is not just about gaining those business skills to succeed in your next job and whatever jobs you have afterwards. It's about using this time to actually improve your leadership skills, your presentation communication skills, your ability to work in teams cross-functionally, because that's going to be your life for the rest of your time in your professional careers. So recognize that is also equally important. Honing your softer skills outside of just your business skills, right? And finally, remember that everyone has their own path. So there's a lot of opportunity during the MBA program to have FOMO, because everyone is going to have different things. They're going to be doing multiple things. You're going to call the shots. So in a way, based on what Medha said, you are basically going to be making decisions for your life, and the MBA program tests you from day one. You're going to make decisions on what to not do and what courses you don't want to take, what things you don't want to attend, so on and so forth, right? So remember at the back of your mind that everyone has a different path. Everyone is set out to do something different, and focus on yourself and focus on how you can improve, versus trying to sort of feel like you're missing out on a bunch of things. And then finally, I'll hand it over to Didi, because you're probably bored of listening to me for the last 20 minutes, but just wanted to sort of provide a quick snapshot on life after MBA and a few takeaways. So Didi, all you.
Thank you, Natu. So, a lot of people have questions as to, what typically are exit opportunities, or what kind of jobs do you get after MBA? There's no standard as such. Historically, management consulting and sort of investment banking were the two main pillars, where people would go. But we've seen over time this has, now changed significantly. While consulting is, a very big sort of opportunity for a lot of people coming from the industry or otherwise. There are also now a lot of roles in sort of product management, e-commerce, the tech world, basically, as we call it. With everything going online, there are a lot of management roles in such companies. Internal strategy for big corporates, big organizations, more specialized roles in marketing and business development, supply chain. It's like a huge opportunity. A lot of companies, especially in your logistics and home delivery space, looking for people in ops and supply chain. And of course, there are your traditional general management, sort of rotational leadership programs. And finally, these days, a lot of people are going down the entrepreneurship route. So, the key sort of takeaway is that there's no sort of one profile or one role which, you can get. Whatever you are applying for and whatever you want to do, just make sure you know why you're applying to that company, and why would you be a good fit there. Like, don't go with a CV full of finance and say, yeah, I want to do operations, because that's not how it would work. The final sort of, key takeaways, though, Natu touched upon most of it, and just want to keep this really short, is I often tell this to a lot of people, that the MBA does not entitle you to anything. Like, just don't think I've got a degree from this school, so yeah, I have this X lakhs of package waiting for me. It's just a process. The MBA is sort of one milestone in your whole path to getting to your eventual goal, wherever it is. Networking, it sounds boring, and in the Indian context we don't do it much, but it is a continuous process and totally worth it. Just now, a lot of you who are even in your undergrad, like, reach out to people. People are always waiting to talk to you. Just do your homework and reach out, ask intelligent questions. Like, people applying for global schools sometimes ask me, I've worked for 1 year, scan the school a bit, do your homework. Don't expect to be spoon fed always. It's okay, sometimes questions can be come across as unintelligent. That's fine, but just open up and network as much as you can. Be authentic. Don't give a story which is just not you, just because you feel this particular school is finance heavy, so I will just say I want to do investment banking or private equity. That's not going to work. You'll be caught in one way or the other. So just don't do that. Spend time writing your essays. Think, look back and reflect on what your journey has been till now, and how the MBA would help you. So just be holistic. Think about MBA as just one other degree and opportunities out there, and talk and evaluate why it could be a great fit for you. Medha and Chhaya, you also want to add something, please feel free to.
I'd be happy to take the questions. You guys have done an amazing job speaking on behalf of at least me, Chhaya, we can say.
Yes, totally. So all points covered. Nothing much to add, but again, would want to emphasize that don't be it India or global. It's not about fitting into a profile. It's about being yourself, despite how it is. So in most interviews, like we have experienced, they would like to see a personality that is different from the rest. So, and if you fit in, then you have to put a lot of effort to stand out. So just be yourself. So with time, you'll figure out what next for you guys.
All right, so that's all we had. Anusha, Amar, if you all want to sort of maybe direct some questions our way, we'd be happy to take them.
Um, Thank you all so much. I really enjoyed listening to all of your personal journeys and stories. And I think most of us can resonate with at least one of you, if not all of you. And I hope that inspires people in the audience to start their own journeys, right? So, and also I really appreciate all of your insights, all of the detailed information into the whole process of getting an MBA. I think that was fantastic. You know, you touched upon the various aspects like the backgrounds needed, how does one build their profiles, the types of MBAs available, the application process itself, you know, exam prep and all the other bells and whistles attached to the application process, choosing the right schools. And I personally love the last piece, right? Maximizing your MBA journey. I think that was fantastic. Oftentimes we just get hung up on getting into an MBA school that we stop thinking about what we want to get out of whatever we joined in. So fabulous piece. And I hope everybody had, fun listening to all of that. And if you feel overwhelmed with all of this information, don't worry, we'll have this video packed on our website. So you can always refer back to this video later whenever you're closer to the process. And don't worry if you've not taken detailed notes. We're here to help. And if you're unable to find this video, you can certainly reach out to us via email and we'll be happy to help you find the videos. All right. So with that, let's transition to the Q&A section. Let me start sharing my screen. Just give me a minute while I get situated here. So again, everybody, I think you might have already seen this. This is where you can post your questions. You can go to www.pigeonhole.at and enter the code 05June21. There's already a lot of questions out over there. So if some of your questions are similar to what people have already asked, just upvote the question and we'll try to get those questions answered. All right, so let me jump to the Pigeonhole platform. There are quite a few questions, so we'll try to get to as many as possible. And panelists, if you feel like there's any question that's standing out, definitely jump in and we can highlight that question. So let's go with the most upvoted question. The question from Salil is, after an MBA, should I try to work in the chemical industry? And how big or small is the package compared to other fields? And would there be some advantage considering that you graduate from ICT? So maybe we'll get a perspective on this, maybe Chhaya and Dhvanil. So we have each side of the spectrum if you want to jump into this.
Sure. So let me go first here. So guys, about the chemical industry itself, it totally depends upon which courses you are taking for the college to begin with, and what is the, I'll say there are two kinds of job that you would want to go back to chemical industry. So one is where you are still associated with chemical industry, but not doing a job in there. But second is you are directly working for a chemical industry. So I am in the former. I am into consulting, management consulting, again, one of the high paid jobs when we enter into. And I do consulting for chemical industry. And what has helped me get here is my background. My background from ICT as an engineer, my background of working with a chemical company is what has got me here. And for the last 4.5 years, I'm doing projects in different chemical industries across different projects. Chemical clients across different projects. So this is the one way that you can get in, where I think your salary will be at par, and so will be the case in terms of getting into, say, IB or equity research. You'll still have places where you will be doing things for chemical industry. So this is not you're directly working for a chemical company, but in the industry, for the industry. And the second aspect is getting into chemical industry, of course. So here also there are a lot of companies like Exxon, all of these people do have management graduates, right? So they do come to campuses, they do hire. So depending on the role, I would say their salaries will be at least at the average salaries of the campuses. So you do not have to worry from financial perspective. But of course, every company will need the management side of the role and the technical side of the role, people to fit in both sides of the role. So there are opportunities, but some colleges will have more opportunities than the other purely because of the specialization. Like, for example, in My Mba, what you have related to agribusiness management, you'll have more companies which are closer than the rest. So Dhvanil, you want to add anything in this?
No, I think fantastic sort of roundup on the packages and the chemical industry. Advantage of ICT, I'd say in India, for those who know it, I'm sure Chhaya, Medha can add. It is definitely advantageous. It's one of the better schools, so it does have some repute. Globally, because of so many name changes and not so many people actually from erstwhile Udacity or now ICT have gone for MBAs abroad. I'd say IIT is still more well known than ICT, but it's just about sort of projecting whatever you did in college, and that in an essay you can always mention something about. There's always an additional or optional essay where you can write whatever you want. So there you can write something about the college and some ranking, back it up with the source or something. Because I know somebody just now, in fact, 2017 batch was trying to apply for an MBA in London Business School, and she realized I was the only one before her, applying, sort of went to LBS. So I think do find, if you can always find, university graduates who have been in a particular business school, that would really help versus, you being the first one from ICT to apply to that school.
Yes, leveraging your network. Great. Okay, I think this question I might skip because people did talk about the different hobbies and community service activities that they did. But if you're still curious, you can always stay back and personally ask that question. And this looks like an important question. What is the approximate cost of getting an MBA? How different is it for India versus abroad? So let's go with the compliment now, Medha and Nattu, if you guys want to jump in and talk about this a little.
Sure. So as you can remember, the slides that were presented, we talked about tier 1, tier 2, 1 year, 2 year, right? In India. Just sorry for the background noise. But so the flagship programs from the older IIMs are the most expensive ones that you'll see amongst the 2-year programs. So the higher the repute, the higher the value that you'll be paying for the college. It's currently around 25 lakhs and upwards for ABC, and somewhere around 20 for the other ones. We have, so essentially, and the lowest one is FMS at around 3-4 lakhs. And so if you want, hey, the best ROI for people who are like looking at the best return on investment, I think that's a great consideration college to look at. But yeah, you can take an approximate cost is upwards of 20 lakhs if you want to go into the good colleges. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. On the international side, it's really dependent on, again, very, very similar, right? Like the higher the rank of the school, typically you'll have a much higher price. But on average, you can sort of assume that upwards of $100,000 typically. So anywhere between $100,000 and 130-ish is what is typically the tuition fees for the 2-year program. On top of that, you'll have additional costs tied to like housing and other stuff, right? So they typically say if you're trying to save up for an MBA abroad for a 2-year program, you want to sort of try and save up and at least be prepared to shell out anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000 typically. What that would mean for most people is that you're going to end up taking loans, and that's kind of where the whole ROI piece comes into question, right? And a lot of schools, so going back to what I said earlier, a lot of schools actually give you scholarships as well. So that cost can dramatically reduce based on the degree of scholarship that you get. And that's really, on a person-to-person basis.
Mm-hmm. Great. And
just one thing
I think, go ahead, Didi.
Anusha. That, a lot of consulting firms, they actually do sometimes sponsor, if you worked with them for 3-4 years, can sometimes sponsor your MBA abroad also. Like I know a few consulting firms who have tie up with Kellogg, provided that I think after your MBA you work with them for 2-3 years sort of. So it's sort of a 0% interest kind of a loan given, and if you stay with them back, then they've sort of covered most of your tuition fee. And abroad also a lot of companies, once you're doing for a 2-year MBA, you're doing an internship. So if you sort of get an offer, a placement offer, and you accept it, then they sometimes end up paying your second year fees. So there are a lot of considerations. I think what Nattu gave was a good sort of ballpark number. And just note every college and every sort of industry you're going to has a different dynamic. So do some research on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good option to remember is try and find a company that can sponsor your studies. Okay.
There's one by Surya Ganesh who says, can we reach out to you? Definitely through LinkedIn. We can reach out to all 4 of us.
Yes, absolutely. If you have any questions, personal questions, please reach out to them via LinkedIn. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. I find this question interesting. I think, Medha, was it you touched upon being up to date with current affairs. So I guess if you could point to some resources of how you personally keep up to date with current affairs, it may not be comprehensive, but just some insight into that.
Just pick up the most followed digital newspapers, I would say. Pick up Economic Times. That was something we all were recommended. The Hindu was recommended when we were prepping because the articles are written from a two-sided way. It's not about the writer does not say I feel hence this. So it was always taking consideration of both sides. So those 2 resources, I think. I have personally used.
So just one point to add here, and especially this has been helpful for me. So just before my MBA, I was also prepping for civil services exams, so which involves a lot of current affairs, right? So you can go to those sites as well to refer, because you will have you'll have a take on everything that's going on politically, at least. So all civil services related sites will also be helpful. Like pick a couple of them. It will just help you stay current with what's going on around the world.
Oh yes, and if you, I think one more thing I just remembered. Reuters is a great source. I did also refer Reuters, so gives you again a worldly view on both sides of things.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this? Nattu or Dhvanil, do you want to add?
I just added a bunch of stuff that I see in the chat. Typically,
okay. Yeah. Great. Hope that helps you. Any question that's standing out to anybody?
I think one of them was around gap year. I think I did see something around gap year. I can't see it now. Okay, yeah. Faisal.
Faisal's question. Okay.
So I think gap year always can be explained during your interviews, and is definitely not considered like a negative, to be, if you're able to explain it well. So if you've scored well in your 10th, 12th and post that, I don't think it'll be a challenge. You can always have a proper explanation for it.
Yeah, it's the same thing abroad as well. You have an option to write an essay about it. Most people choose to do that and explain why they took a gap year. People abroad actually value you taking some time off as well to pursue some hobby or some dream or whatever it is, or giving back to community, whatever it is. As long as you can explain it in the essay, you should be fine. No one really views it as a negative thing at all.
Okay, great. Okay.
So, Anusha, so we just saw a point related to MBA in technical fields or where technical skills. So, I would not generally people take up MBA for being on the management side of things. However, there are a couple of places where you'll still be related to your technical fields. One being your operations management from NITI. Okay, so NITI it'll still keep you in the production and the operation side related to your chemical engineering work that you have done if you get into the industry. Similarly goes for NIFT. You'll still be into the merchandising area of it. So there are some specialized colleges which will help you stay in that field, but the entire purpose of MBA generally is to move away from technical and move more towards the management roles with time.
Okay.
But that being,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nat.
Yeah, so I think one thing I do want to add is that, like, you know, it's the same thing for abroad as well, right? You may not necessarily have, again, an MBA in something, but then most people choose to do a supply chain or ops concentration, right? That's probably the closest thing that you can land. And then you land an offer in a company where you can actually, you know, be in a supply chain role, right? Be it procurement, be it inventory planning, be it whatever, right? But a little bit on the management side as opposed to, you know, core technical analyst or whatever, right? So that's probably the best direct transition. That being said, you can always leverage a lot of your skills. You may not really use your thermodynamic you know, equations again, but there's a lot of other transferable skills that, you know, you're going to leverage from your jobs. So just keep that in mind.
One example that comes to my mind is, I mean, doing a marketing internship or working in a consumer goods company, right? I can't be putting just any information for the sakes of marketing it, right? So maybe knowing what happens in the technical side of things does help me as a marketer, as a marketing manager, not to say anything about that product which isn't true. So yeah.
Right, right. And I'm sure your backgrounds do come into use some way or the other. Okay, I think I may just take up this question, paraphrase it a little bit. I think the question essentially asks, you know, how important is your 10 standard and 12 standard GPA and your engineering GPA important while you're considering these, I guess, tier 1 schools? If you didn't have very great numbers, you know, how does that affect your whole package? So maybe
the rescue.
Right. So
I mean, even though I've recently, I mean, graduated, I can't really comment completely because I'm not on the selecting committee, right? So it's always a unique case and not a direct no, to things. It's always preferred that you have a 999. It was always said, which meant above 90% in both your 10th and 12th, and above 9 GPA in your graduation. So a 999 combination was like, hey, you're out there for a good profile. But does that mean that you won't be given a chance? I mean, I can't really comment here. Chhaya, if you...
So again, I mean, the answers to all of these questions about getting selected is depends, because it depends a lot on your what is your CV exactly saying, what your story is, right? The academic portion is one portion of it, but if you have a very strong spike in your CV with respect to some other areas that you are really good at, right? Like how Medha mentioned in the beginning that she had a friend who had a Limca Book of Records in a lot of musical instruments at a time. So your conversation gets pivoted to that. Like the people observe that on your CV more than your academic marks in that case. So it's not a must. It's about what story your entire CV is telling the person who's reading in front of it. If there's a clear spike, if there's a coherent story, then you might have a chance. And especially in India, there's also like if you're saying about 99.5 percentile, it depends a lot on there are categories, the reservations are in place for different when you apply to these Indian universities also. So the marks also totally depend upon from what angle you're applying. So.
Yeah, and thank you both. I think that makes sense. And also was it, I think, Dhvanil who mentioned that, you know, you can use your application and your essays to sort of discuss, you know, what actually happened during those times and explain yourself maybe.
Moral of
Okay,
the
so
story, don't get disheartened at not giving attempt at CAT just because you didn't have good scores. So that's just the moral of what we were trying to say.
Right. Absolutely. So we're sort of close to our time here. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions over here, but you know what, if you want some of your questions answered, please just stay back. The panelists have agreed to stay back for a little more time and answer all of your questions, and I'm very generous of them. So just hang in there, but you know, you can keep posting questions. We'll try to take them. And before wrapping up and letting you all go, I just wanted to give you a quick preview of what's coming up in the upcoming sessions. So we are going to be back with 2 Inspire Career Guidance sessions. The first one is on 12th June, titled Keep Calm and Spring Back. You know, all of us have faced setbacks and challenges along our journeys. And I mean, I'm sure we've all struggled to navigate out of them or are still struggling. So I personally feel that hearing stories of how people navigate through their own struggles is very inspiring and can help overcome one's struggles. So we have Rishabh and Sushant who will be talking about their own journeys. They've faced some setbacks, but they've navigated through them like champs. So they'll talk about it, give you some tips and insights on how to overcome your own challenges. So be on the lookout. And the second Inspire Talk is on what does it take to be an entrepreneur. And, you know, we all have crazy ideas and dreams that we probably want to turn them into reality. So maybe Shirin and Swapnil in their talk can give you a glimpse into how they started their own ventures and talk about their professional journeys. So we'll be sending out announcements about these sessions on the website and social media handles. Be sure to keep an eye out for them. And finally, with that, I'd like to conclude the session for today. Firstly, I do want to thank all the panelists again for taking the time out and sharing their journeys with us and giving us a lot of valuable tips. Dhvanil, Nattu, Chhaya, Medha, we really appreciate it. And I hope the audience also will join me in thanking you from wherever they are. Next, I do want to thank the team at Spark and the ICT social media team for their continued support and doing all the behind the scenes work that makes these sessions possible and so seamless. Thank you so much, guys. And also do leave your feedback for us for this session, what you thought could have gone better. We love to see how we're doing and what can make these sessions better and even more helpful. You can follow us on our website, follow us on social media channels, join our WhatsApp groups. You'll get all the timely updates and registration links over there. So with that, thank you again for joining us today. You may exit the webinar, but if you do want to stay back and wish to ask any questions, we'll give you the permission to unmute yourself and chat with us. So we'll be here for a few more minutes and we would love to hear from you. So thank you all for joining in.
Yeah, I would really like to know what are the hobbies and community service that all of you did while you were in ICT.
All right. Okay, let's answer Aniket's question then. And just to keep this more smooth flowing, maybe if people want to ask questions, if you raise your hands, we'll just call out people. That way it can be